A man named Joaquin is working on some sort of device. He is bound to a wheelchair. He has a pet dog named Casimiro. He calls a vet to ask if they could do an operation on Casimiro because he is unable to walk, but it was not possible. After this, Joaquin starts researching gentle ways to put a dog to sleep. Eventually, he gets a narcotic and mixes it into dog biscuits. One day, a woman named Berta and her young daughter Betty, a quiet girl who doesn't speak, arrive at his door. They saw his ad about a room for rent and showed up without warning, which irritates Joaquin. Betty tries to approach Casimiro, but the dog growls. Joaquin warns her not to touch him as the dog dislikes unfamiliar people. To Joaquin's dismay, Berta decides to move in immediately. Still, he reluctantly agrees, knowing he needs the rent money to avoid losing his home. Joaquin is withdrawn and unwelcoming, especially when Berta begins cleaning the place and trying to be friendly. She shares parts of her story, how she trained as a dancer and came to the city with big dreams, only to end up performing in strip clubs. Life becomes more chaotic. Berta plays music loudly, and Betty often hides in unexpected corners of the house. One time, Berta goes out looking for Betty and stumbles upon a crashed car. She looks at it in awe, but doesn't really understand what it was doing there.
Betty!
She resumes searching for Betty and finds her in the closet. Later, she finds pictures from Joaquin's past life. On Joaquin's birthday, Berta and Betty surprise him with a special dinner. During dinner, Berta tells Joaquin Betty is not mute and she just chose not to speak. Their conversation continues and Berta asks why he doesn't sell the house to pay his debts, but Joaquin seems to have a connection with the house. Much of Joaquin's time is spent working with electronics in his basement, while Berta spends her time dancing and taking care of her daughter. One day, Casimiro walks towards Betty, which amazes everyone. Joaquin sees this and goes back to the basement. He lit his cigarettes and started crying, sobbing while trying to work. One evening, strange sounds from the neighboring house catch his attention. He uses a stethoscope against the wall to eavesdrop and realizes a group of men next door are observing him, even aware that he uses a wheelchair. They decide to return at a quieter time. Concerned, Joaquin tapes the stethoscope in place and links it to his computer to record their conversations, then heads upstairs to join Berta and Betty for dinner. The next morning, Joaquin listens to the audio he recorded through the wall. He notes down the names he hears, but the conversation is vague. All he can gather is that the men are moving wood around. Hoping to learn more, he discreetly drills a small hole in the wall and slips in a miniature camera linked to his computer, concealing it behind an old computer case. Worried about what might be happening next door, Joaquin tells Berta and Betty they need to leave immediately, though he doesn't explain why. Berta is furious. They have a signed rental agreement, and she accuses him of pushing people away because he's afraid to trust anyone. She gives him until morning to reconsider. Later that night, Joaquin sits alone studying the notes he gathered. He notices the men only work at night, digging what looks like a tunnel and planning to finish it by Christmas Eve. By the next day, he tells Berta that they can stay. Joaquin returns to his basement and starts watching the camera feed closely, jotting down details. There's even a mention of using explosives, but the biggest shock comes when he sees Berta sneak into the neighbor's property by climbing across the rooftops. She knows the men. Worse, she's involved with their leader, Galaretto. It turns out she only rented the room to spy on Joaquin. Galaretto reprimands her for the risky visit, hands her a special key, and tells her to stick to texting from now on. That night, something strange happens. Betty enters Joaquin's room in her underwear, silently watches him sleep for a few seconds, and then quietly leaves. Meanwhile, Joaquin keeps watching the footage. He eventually sees the men studying a set of blueprints and everything clicks. They're building a tunnel to rob the bank at the corner of the street. The next day, while Berta is out shopping, Joaquin tries to connect with Betty by showing interest in her drawings, but she ignores him. Still, he uncovers something unexpected. Betty speaks, but only to Casimiro. Curious, Joaquin hides a microphone in the dog's collar to capture anything she might say. He also soon figures out more of the gang's plan. They're going to load the stolen cash onto a small cart and move it through the tunnel beneath the street. During a conversation about the logistics, Galaretto, the leader, finds out that one of his men, Muneco, has been using his phone inside the house and even sent someone the address of the bank. Furious, Galaretto sends someone to bring Muneco in, then lashes out at another accomplice, Zurdo, for recruiting someone so careless. Once Muneco is dragged into the basement, he's beaten and tied to a table. Tearfully, he tries to defend himself, saying he only wanted to contact a girl he likes and didn't reveal any details about their scheme. But Galaretto isn't convinced. Accusing Muñeco of jeopardizing the entire operation, he brutally stabs him with a screwdriver and finishes him off with a blow to the head. Joaquin watches the whole thing unfold through his surveillance, clutching his phone but too afraid to call the police. After the murder, Galaretto discusses the disposal of the body with his brother, Canario. They decide the corrupt police officer working with them will handle it.
¿Qué hacemos con este?
Y uno no puede ayudar con esto.
That night, Joaquin retrieves the hidden microphone from Casimiro's collar. Wanting to stop Berta from interfering or warning the others, he secretly slips a sedative into her wine. Once she's unconscious, he ties her to his bed and sets an alarm on her phone to remind himself when to give her another dose. With her restrained, he continues monitoring the gang's activities. From the new recordings, Joaquin learns that the corrupt officer warned the thieves not to open safes 747 and 748. Those belong to powerful criminals. A new member of the crew arrives, a woman named Renee. She's there to take Muneco's place and is carrying the explosives needed to break into the bank. When Berta regains consciousness, Joaquin calmly feeds her and confronts her about her involvement. He asks why she's involved with someone like Galaretto, but she defends him, saying that while he's a thief, he isn't violent.
No le haría mal a nadie, no es un mal tipo.
To show her the truth, Joaquin opens his laptop and plays the footage of Muneco's death. The brutal reality of what her boyfriend did leaves her shaken. Afterward, Joaquin goes to speak to Betty. He gently reassures her that she doesn't need to fear him, then invites her to move into his late daughter's bedroom. He even tells her she can bring Casimiro along. He takes her to the room and tells her she can play there. Joaquin starts putting together a risky plan to steal part of the thieves' haul. His idea is simple. Dig a hole through his floor, directly above the tunnel, and wait for the moment when their cart passes underneath. Then he'll just reach in and snatch some of the cash. While helping Berta stretch her limbs, he asks how long it has been since Betty talked. She tells him the last time she spoke was when she was 4. He takes the necklace she wears, the one holding the key Galaretto gave her. She then asked what his plan is and warned him he should be careful when he sends messages from her phone because everything must be similar.
Tenés que poner un espacio antes de la primera palabra.
Ya me di cuenta.
He then shares the plan with her. She immediately warns him it's far too dangerous, that he'll get caught and probably killed. Joaquin, however, believes in his strategy. Back at his surveillance setup, Joaquin listens in as the thieves hit a setback. They accidentally strike a water pipe while digging, realizing too late that they've been going the wrong way. It's fixable, but the delay means they won't reach the bank by Christmas Eve as intended. Instead, they'll finish on Christmas Day.
Nos olvidamos de entrar el sábado, ¿eh? Lo pasamos para el domingo y entramos más temprano.
That worries them, since fireworks and noise are more common on the 24th in Argentina, which would have helped mask the heist. Still, they hope the holiday chaos will work in their favor. Unfortunately for Joaquin, there's a major change in their plan. The gang decides to ditch the small cart in favor of a sturdier cat carrier. It's enclosed and more stable, meaning Joaquin won't be able to access the cash from above like he had planned. With no other option, he's forced to rethink everything. Joaquin completes the hole in his floor anyway, installing a lid and camouflaging it with dirt so it blends in naturally. He then enters the tunnel to study the broken pipe and takes detailed measurements, confirming that water is still flowing through it. Just as he's about to return, he hears voices. Galaretto and Canario are approaching. He quickly hides in an unused part of the tunnel and puts dirt on his face not to get noticed, remaining silent as they walk past. While there, he overhears them talking about a hidden safe house that only the two of them and Zurdo know about. Canario isn't thrilled about Zurdo being involved, especially after the incident with Muneco, and makes it clear he doesn't fully trust him. After Galaretto and Canario leave the tunnel, Joaquin makes it back to the house just in time to give Berta another dose of the sedative. But something feels off. Betty is missing. He goes to the room she was in, calling her name, but she isn't there.
Betty. Betty.
When he finds Casimiro alone, Joaquin quickly realizes what's happened. Betty must have climbed down into the tunnel. He rushes to the basement to see what happened. When he checks his surveillance, he confirms it. She's wandered into the neighbor's house, poking around near the criminal's base of operations. Right then, the gang returns to the basement. Fortunately, Betty knows to stay hidden. Along with them is Gutman, the corrupt police officer who's been helping coordinate the heist. While the men talk, Zerto starts searching frantically for his missing watch, convinced he left it there. Gutman hands over a list of vaults they must avoid because they're connected to silent alarms and promises to reroute all patrols away from that area during the robbery. Gutman asks if Gallaretto is really quitting after this, and Gallaretto confirms, telling him he is leaving with a girl. In return for his cooperation, Gutman demands that Gallaretto retrieve incriminating documents from safe deposit box 155, files someone has been using to blackmail him. Zerto asks what the box contains, and Gutman tells him that he would rather not know and he shouldn't take either. Zerto, unfazed, tells him he doesn't care what the people have on him. Once the coast is clear, Betty runs back and Joaquin helps her climb up through the hole. The moment she comes, he hugs her and reassures her that everything is over. He quickly discovers she's the one who took Zerto's missing watch. Later, Joaquin sees that Gallaretto is calling Berta instead of texting, which means she has to respond in person to avoid raising suspicion. He tells her she needs to talk to him. Still angry and refusing to help, Berta stays silent, so Joaquin brings out his laptop again. He then shows her what he recorded in the collar of Casimiro. He then pauses the recording and tells her he's made a connection. Betty hasn't spoken in 2 years, which is around the time she met Gallaretto. Then he plays another audio clip captured from Casimiro's collar. It's Betty speaking softly to the dog, revealing that Gallaretto had touched her inappropriately. The revelation leaves Berta devastated. She cries, regretting ever bringing him into their life and unable to bear what happened to her daughter. Joaquin then tries to calm her down. He keeps telling her that he will ruin him, but Berta is too emotional for this. He explains his plan. He's going to flood the tunnel and sabotage the whole heist. Finally willing to fight back, Berta agrees to help. When Gallaretto calls again, she picks up and calmly tells him everything is normal and that Joaquin rarely goes into the basement anymore. Once the call ends, Joaquin gives her another sedative. That night, as fireworks light up the sky on Christmas Eve, Joaquin and Betty sit together watching the display, while beneath them, the thieves are getting ready to blow open the bank with the explosives. The thieves plan to resume the heist at 8 in the morning.
¿Podemos descansar un rato?
Sí, vamos. A las 8 entramos.
Joaquin takes advantage of the pause. After locking Betty safely in her room, he sneaks into the tunnel. He quietly relocates the explosive, placing it against the water pipe instead of its original target. Then he makes his way to the far end of the tunnel, where he breaks into the bank itself. Inside, he picks the lock of one of the high-security vaults, specifically number 748, which they were warned not to touch, and grabs a bag of cash. In his rush to get out, he doesn't notice that the vault door hasn't fully closed behind him. On his way back, Joaquin spots Renee inspecting the tunnel. He tries to hide like he did before, but hears that they're about to start the ventilation system. Knowing the fan will suck all the oxygen out of the space, he has no choice but to retreat into the bank to avoid suffocating. Fortunately for him, the crew's preparation takes longer than expected, giving him time to escape through the tunnel and make it back home without being detected. Renee enters the bank with 2 of Gallaretto's men, Peachy and Schwarzenegger, and they begin opening vaults based on the list Gutman provided. When they get to vault 748, they realize someone has already been inside. At this moment, the pipe begins leaking water into the tunnel. They assume the blast caused the damage and don't suspect sabotage. Renee quickly warns that they must leave immediately. Meanwhile, Gallaretto, Canario, and Zerto see the flooding too, but instead of helping, they grab what they've already stolen and flee. Renee, however, isn't as lucky. She attempts to cross the tunnel just as it begins to fill, but doesn't make it far enough. Trapped midway and unable to go forward or back, she's caught in the flood. Hearing someone screaming for help, Joaquin opens the floor panel and sees Renee struggling in the rising water. He tries to assist her, but when she spots him, she begins shouting, accusing him of being the neighbor and alerting the others. In a panic, she even tries to drag him down with her. Left with no choice, Joaquin pulls away, seals the hatch, and leaves her to drown as the water level continues to rise. The pipe finally bursts completely, flooding not only the tunnel, but the bank and Joaquin's basement as well. He removes the lid from the tunnel entrance and quickly rinses away any signs of tampering. Then he yanks a rope that triggers a pile of old computer cases to collapse over the spot, concealing it. Grabbing his bag of stolen cash, he exits the basement just as the entire block loses power. Peachy and Schwarzenegger try to escape as well, but the rising water forces them to turn back. In desperation, they unlock one of the alarm-connected safes to trigger police intervention, hoping someone will rescue them before they drown.
Hay que hacer sonar la alarma.
Upstairs, Joaquin checks on Berta, who has regained consciousness and is furious. She attacks him, pinning him down and demanding to know where her daughter is. He tells her where she is, and still emotional, Berta asks why he never trusted her. Joaquin responds by kissing her and trying to convince her they can run away together now that he has the money. But Berta refuses. She tells him she really likes him, but she can't do this. When she grabs the syringe to sedate him instead, Joaquin is forced to strike her to stop her. After injecting her with the sedative, he cleans himself up, removes any traces of dirt, and steps outside to speak with the authorities. To the police, Joaquin presents himself as a concerned, unsuspecting neighbor worried about water leaking into his home. An officer instructs him to wait inside. Nearby, Gutman is monitoring the situation. He calls Gallardo to demand answers, but Gallardo has no explanation for what went wrong. When he admits they didn't recover the blackmail files from the vault, Gutman ends the call in frustration.
No llegamos a sacarla.
Shortly after, Gutman arrives at Joaquin's house with a group of officers. Joaquin allows them in without hesitation, continuing to play the part of a confused but cooperative citizen dealing with property damage. They tell him they need to search the house, and he seems confused, asking why they need to search his house just because of a pipe burst.
¿Pero por qué tiene que revisar toda la casa por un caño que se rompió en el sótano?
They tell him about the robbery and ask him not to waste their time, so he quickly lets them search it. He has already released Betty and placed her in the bedroom with Berta, presenting the two as his wife and daughter.
Vinieron a ver por qué salía agua de abajo. No pasa nada.
As the officers search the basement, Joaquin sits with Gutman. Gallardo keeps calling Berta's phone, which is still in Joaquin's possession. Joaquin ignores the calls. The basement is a mess, and due to the flooding, the floor has partially collapsed, hiding any trace of the tunnel. The police find nothing suspicious and leave, convinced that the house holds no secrets. When Gutman is about to leave the house, he picks up the phone by mistake, assuming it belongs to Joaquin. He saves the number and casually tells him to call if he remembers anything useful about the break-in.
Si encontrás algo raro o te acordás de algo, lo que sea.
Just minutes after Gutman leaves, Gallardo arrives at the house with Zurdo and Canario, all dressed as police officers. Not wanting to raise suspicion, Joaquin lets them in, and while trying to stall them, he secretly sends a message to Gutman, asking him to return immediately.
Y no lo puedo atender ahora. Quédese tranquilo.
Meanwhile, Gutman is trying to call Gallardo, furious that Vault 748 was opened against his orders. Gallardo doesn't care. He ends the call abruptly and starts interrogating Joaquin. Joaquin sticks to his cover, claiming he knows nothing except that his basement flooded during the attempted robbery. He also says he lives alone and that the tenant who rented a room left the day before. But right then, Betty walks out of the bedroom, completely undermining his story.
Parando mientras buscaban un departamento.
Joaquin, unaware that Betty is standing behind him, continues with his fabricated story. Gallardo pulls out a gun. He then asks Joaquin to search the house. Joaquin reminds him his house has been searched and there is no reason for him to search again. At this time, Gallardo points to Betty, who is standing behind Joaquin. Gallardo checks on Berta, who is still under the effects of the sedative, then grabs Betty and starts pressuring Joaquin for the truth. Joaquin keeps lying, saying he thought the tenants left. Gallardo asks why she is sedated and why she is on his bed. Joaquin keeps feeding him the lie, but the story starts to fall apart under pressure. Frustrated, Galaretto knocks him out of his wheelchair and onto the floor. Canario joins in, violently beating Joaquin in an attempt to force a confession. Galaretto stands over Joaquin, telling him he is going to kill him if he doesn't tell the truth. He starts telling him in detail how he is planning on doing that, and the men continue to beat him up. The assault only stops when Berta's phone rings. Galaretto answers it, only to hear Gutman on the other end, still thinking he's speaking to Joaquin, saying he's at the door. Now panicked, Galaretto tells Zurdo and Canario to let Gutman in. Once inside, Gutman is confused to see Galaretto and demands to know why he has Berta's phone number. Galaretto, on the other hand, is suspicious of Gutman and orders Canario to tie him up too. Tensions escalate. No one is sure who's betraying whom, and when Galaretto raises his gun, aiming it at Joaquin, the threat finally pushes him over the edge. He begins to confess. Joaquin, desperate to save himself, tells yet another lie, this time far more believable. He turns to Zurdo and pretends to know him, acting as if they were co-conspirators, even calling him Lefty with the name his friends call him. Using everything he'd overheard during his surveillance, Joaquin claims that Zurdo was the one who first approached him, sneaking across the rooftops to sedate Berta and pitch the idea of stealing from the tunnel. According to this version of events, Zurdo told him about the heist and convinced him to dig a hole through his floor so they could take a cut of the loot and split it later. Zurdo immediately denies everything, calling Joaquin a liar. But Joaquin ups the stakes. He mentions the secret safe house, the one only Galaretto, Canario, and Zurdo were supposed to know about. Then he directs them to a cupboard where they find Zurdo's missing watch. Joaquin claims Zurdo accidentally left it there during one of their meetings. The accusation sends everything spiraling. Feeling cornered and betrayed, Zurdo pulls out his gun and shoots Canario, who fires back in the same instant. Both fall to the floor, dead. Galaretto, devastated by the loss of his brother, drops to his knees in grief. At that moment, Berta wakes up. She sees a gun on the floor, grabs it, and without hesitation shoots Galaretto, finally avenging what he did to her daughter. Gutman, who had been tied up with little effort, slips free and quickly steps in, offering to help cover up the chaos. He begins moving the bodies to his car and gives Joaquin advice on how to clean up the blood. But when he asks for the stolen money, Joaquin refuses. Instead, he reveals he has a recording of Gutman collaborating with the thieves, enough to ruin him. Gutman isn't fazed. He tells him whatever he has now won't save him in the long run. He chuckles, brushes it off, and while reaching into a jar for what he assumes are regular biscuits, starts eating the treats Joaquin had laced with sedatives for Casimiro. As he chews, he suddenly threatens Berta with his weapon. Joaquin, seeing no alternative, lets him take the money and walk out. But as Gutman drives away, the narcotics begin to hit. He becomes dizzy, loses control of the car, and crashes in a fiery wreck. The bodies he is carrying in the trunk are still there. Unable to move and slipping in and out of consciousness, he gives up, lying in the dirt, waiting for either rescue or death. Some days later, Joaquin's house is finally cleared out. The rooms are empty, the blood scrubbed away, and the past buried. With everything behind him, Joaquin sets out to start a new life. This time Berta, Betty, and Casimiro by his side.